Oops, that's not in the mode. All right. Well, I've been working toward this little presentation for quite a few years now. I'm trying to figure out how to explain it. And I think I finally hit on something that is presentable and worth your time. And it's about modes. What is the deal with modes? Now, we all, if we're musicians, and we've heard of the modes, and how do we use them? What's going on with the modes? It's you sort of need a little bit of background to understand what's going on with those. I remember when I was first introduced to modes by a great jazz teacher, Randy Masters. He said, "Well, you got to play through the modes. Just play through the modes and increase your understanding of music and how to improvise and play through changes." And I'm going like, well, but it's just the same notes starting in a different place. What's the deal? And he says, just continue to play them and you will understand. It took me about 5 years to understand what was going on with these things. Now, I understand, but it's still hard to explain in words. But the deal with modes is that they actually, even though they're from ancient Greece, the Greeks invented them, and we'll get into that in a minute, they form still the basis of Western musical structure, and they're even more useful now for understanding how chord changes work and how to improvise through them. So, and it's a great way to get comfortable in playing in one key, which is diatonicism, the feeling of playing in one key, diatonic. Dia is the Greek meaning one, and so one tonic key, one key. So okay, mode is it's this type of scale, right? So what would be the difference between scales and modes? Well, a scale is kind of a newer idea. It's still been around for many years. But it includes the idea of modes. So the scale was sort of an invention that included the sort of wrapped up modes in the whole idea of harmony and everything else. A scale is just a sequence of notes, right? It's a sequence of any notes, up or down. It could have it could have more than 8 notes. It could have more than 12. It could have all kinds of notes in it. Half and whole steps, combination of half and whole steps. And that forms a palette for your melodic artistically painting with melodies. So a mode is a type of scale, but it's a little fuzzier concept. It's relative to a fixed scale. You can actually build different modes on the notes of one scale. So it's like a subconstruction of a scale. But of course, it's also a palette for your melodies, and it's a harmonic environment. That's kind of a nice phrase. Harmonic environment. We'll be talking about the Greek modes here because they are amazingly useful, and they are the most relevant to modern improvisation for sure, and just understanding what we're doing when we're playing in a key. And of course, there's a lot of different kinds. There are church modes, for instance. The church modes were kind of a complicated and very rule-bound development by the Catholic Church, various parts of the Catholic Church and offshoots. This is like the hymn writers early on, who were using many odd rules based on things like what note to end on and what notes could be used before you ended on the note, and all that stuff is not that relevant today because we're just not writing that way anymore, generally. So, one way to kind of get at this question of modes was what were the ancient Greeks working with as far as their instruments? There's so much of the stuff is predicated on what you're using to make music, right? Using your voice, you're using drums. One of my great musical associates, Barbara Higbee, had a very funny thing to say about about music. It's really, you're either talking about gear or you're talking about relationships. All right, it's gear versus relationships. But what about your relationship with your gear? So really, what was the Greeks' gear? They were using lyres, which they were harps, right? They were early harps, which you just have strings strung on. Now those are the most legit instruments because they were tunable. You could match them up to each other, and you see them on the vases, and the writing about plays and music, all that stuff, historical stuff from Greece. It's lyres this, it's lyres that. They probably had fiddle-like instruments, and they probably had drums, but that wasn't really high class. Wasn't written about. It was just for whooping it up, dancing and drinking and all that stuff. Okay, so I don't have a lyre here. I have some really great friends who have beautiful harps, and if you think about a Celtic harp, that's a lyre. But I do have a little zither here, which is just like a lyre because it's got a certain number of strings and they're all fixed pitch, right? So you can't really, what you got is what you've tuned your strings to, right? Very nice. So if I've got this thing tuned, I don't know what note it's tuned to. The Greeks didn't have any tuners, or they didn't have any fixed reference. They didn't know about vibrations per second or anything like that. They might have had a master bell, and the Apollo tempo that you'd have to go over there to tune your instrument if you really wanted it to be tuned. Or people would just tune to each other, or there would just be one person and they'd tune to themselves, right? But the idea that there was going to be either half steps or whole steps was happening even at that time. The idea that you could divide up the scale into 7 increments, right? Right, and then you have these 7 little steps to get to the scale, and we start with that basic idea, right? So I've got it tuned. Right, there it is. There's your major scale. But you're stuck with that major scale, right? Because in order to get out of the major scale, you have to go to a different string, right? If you wanted to, say, have a minor type scale, right? You'd have to do, there's one. You'd have to start on the 3rd string up. And this one happens to be, whoa. Right, so that's how you got your different harmonic environments, right? If you wanted a sad sound, you'd have that one. If you wanted to get people dancing a little bit more, let's see, what you could go, yeah. Right, you start on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5th note, you get a major. You get that badass major, the Mixolydian mode, and these are modes of instrument tuned to a major scale, the Ionian mode. And then if they wanted to do a minor, let's say they want to do, you could go to the 2nd one, the Dorian, and you'd have all these nice notes, then kind of right? So the modes are derived from a sequence of pitches And this is what you got, and this is all you get. But you get seven. You get seven different flavors out of one scale. And if you got an instrument like this, this is how you do it, right? So the modes totally make sense in the context of an instrument like this, which is what most people were working with. You get some very quizzical. Right, there it is. There's the right, the Lydian. That's the Lydian mode. It's like Foggy Mountain Breakdown mode. So what was going on with this in Greece? These all these modes are named after places around Greece because they were the Greeks. Just to kind of remember these things and sort of get the vibe of each mode, it's important to get these sounds of each of these modes in your head and the names. Well, how do you do that? You can do that by thinking about, making up little stories about the Greeks, right? And I used to see the Athenians. The Athenians kind of were the people that sort of ran things, and they had the biggest town, and they were the capital, sort of, or they just, they were kind of the politicians, and they had the money, and so I can see the Athenians sitting around on their stone couches or whatever they had. You look at the vases and they're just like sitting there like flatly and going, we are the Athenians and we are the head administrators of this whole area, and since we live on the Ionian Peninsula, we are going to organize this for you all. And so we are going to have the basic mode, the Ionian mode, because it's pleasant, it's positive, and it's the bottom. We're at the bottom of everything, and we run the show here, or so we think. And so I can see them going, well, we will have the Ionian mode, and then we will assign different characters of modes to different places all over. So what's the next mode? It's the Dorian, and that sounds like those Dorians. It's the minor scale. Oh, the Dorians. They're kind of sober. They're not too interesting, but you can get them dancing. Right? If you get enough mead in them. So yeah, the Dorians, they got that sound. And then of course we got the next one is the Phrygians. The Phrygians. Well, that's weird. It's got a flat 2. The Phrygian, man, they're just stomping around all the time and they're wailing. They're throwing their arms up in the air. They're a hoot. All right, I don't know about them. They're kind of weird, but man, they sure know how to party. So what's the next one? It's Meet George Jetson, the Lydians. It's on for every funny situation comedy. That's the Lydian mode. It's always right. The Lydians, they're so happy. Their songs coming around here. They're smiling. They're always saying, ooh, they're so weird. What are they hiding? The Lydians. Ooh, I don't know about them. Okay, what's the next one? Let's see. After Lydian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How about those Mixolydians anyway? Oh, they're a bunch of rockers. Keep your daughters away from them. But you can always depend on a good resolution. That's the Aeolian mode, also known as a natural minor. It's the sad one. The Aeolians, yeah, they're just so down. They're so depressed. The wind blows all the time over there in Aeolia. And you know what happens when the wind blows all the time? It's an ill wind. It's just, they're always moping around. Like going, oh man, the wind just keeps blowing. My wind, the wind. Yeah, they're downer. So that's the Aeolians. So what do we get? We're getting up there now. What's the next one? That's the next to last one, right? We got 6, and then the 7th degree. That's almost, yeah. So it starts on that one. Whoa. That is, there's not even a natural 5th in that scale. It's like a flat 5th. It's so weird. The Locrians, they're so far away. We never see them. They're so weird. I would never go there. It's so far. They're just, did you know they eat snails? So that's, you look at the character of these 7 different harmonic environments. You can make up stuff, make up stories to get you into whatever the vibe is of each scale. And so we generate these by, it doesn't matter what note we start on. There's our major scale, which is Ionian. Dorian is the next one. And then the Phrygian. Lydian. Mixolydian, right? And then the Aeolian, and then the last one, of course, right? So it's hard to separate these different scales from, if we go through them, it's hard to separate them from, it just sounds like you're playing, just starting on a different note. So that's one of the things that's sort of confusing about modes at first. It's because that's the way you generate them, is you start on successive notes of the Ionian mode. But it's hard to stop hearing the major scale because it's such a used scale for us. People talk about C. People use the C only for convenience, right? Because, on a keyboard, that's just the white notes, right? Key of C is just the white notes. Same idea as this. If you took away all the black notes out of a piano, you'd basically have this again. You'd have a harp tune with 7 notes in it. So, but whatever note you start on, it makes this set of relationships. When you order your starting scale as Ionian, so I could start on any note. What am I starting on? E flat. That's E flat Ionian. Yeah, and then that's going to be Dorian again. Whatever note we start, we're sort of key free for that. It doesn't really matter